I'll tell you the less exciting story of this trench. I've done that joke every time and it's got a little patter of laughter every time, which is a success in my book. So basically, this trench was first opened in 2017, more or less the exact footprint it is now. As you can imagine, that was also the year in which that mosaic was discovered, so there was a bit of a distraction. And we didn't get a chance to actually excavate anything in here at all. All we had was the topsoil taken off, and then it was cleaned up, and that was it. We didn't get a chance to actually excavate anything in here at all. Hence why this year, exposing the rest of that mosaic, we wanted to get into here to actually have a look see what's going on. Now, this is the central part of the villa. This is the front wall, the main wall of the villa, central room. The back wall is up there, and outside of that we've got this front, slightly rougher corridor wall. Matt may have mentioned, or someone may have mentioned, that there was a corridor along the front of the building here. Outside of that corridor wall, we've got this sort of cobbly, gravelly, chalky surface. That's probably a remnant of some sort of yard, a metalled surface leading up to the front of the villa. Here we have a drainage gully, and what that is there for is to basically capture rainwater running off of the roof of this corridor, which would have been sloping like that, down into the gully, and then it would just take the water away. You can see in the top we've got a deposit of stone roof tiles, and this deposit carried on all the way through the top of this gully. You can see a few of them sticking out there, and that is where at some point at the end of the building's life the roof tiles have started sliding off, and they've just fallen into the top of this gully that was already quite silted up by that point. We did also have a large part of an enormous storage jar that seemed to be smashed down into the top of that gully. This is a pretty rough foundation here. We did suspect that this may have been actually an opening through here initially. There's quite a regular corner of the wall here, but we no longer think that. What we think is some of the stone that was there has just been either robbed away or perhaps torn away by the plough. You can see this scar in here, and that's probably where a plough has just come along and just dragged some of the material out of the way. So we no longer think that's an entranceway. There has to be a front door to this villa somewhere. If this was the general location of the front door, there would be a threshold somewhere. It may be that we've got so little surviving here that the threshold was actually a bit higher up. We're not sure. What we do have is this flat mortarry surface on this wall that could potentially have had a stone slab or something on it. It may be the entrance, it may not. We're not 100% certain. We just haven't got enough surviving to be able to be confident in any kind of conclusions with that. So we're now in this front corridor. One of the questions we wanted to answer was, is there any trace of the floor in the corridor? I'm standing now on the natural, what we call the natural. That's basically geology. As you can see, there's no evidence of a floor here. The original floor that was in here was robbed away at some point. What we do have is this chalky surface, or very rough surface. That may be a very crude sort of later surface that's put down. It may not, it may just be demolition related. We're not 100% sure. But what we do have in the middle here, we've got this circular arrangement of tiles, and that's intentional. It's what we call a post pad, which is for a big timber that would come along, and as the roof was starting to decay, starting to sag inwards, they're just putting that timber up there to stop it falling down in the hope that it just stays up a little bit longer. They're trying to eke out the life of the building as it comes to its sort of end of its life. So that's when all this sort of rubble is starting to appear. Things are falling apart, things are falling down, and they're just desperately trying to keep it going. You can compare the crudeness of that with the fineness of the mosaic. It's very clear that they're happening at two different times. So we come into the centre, and one of the things again we wanted to try and work out was, is there a mosaic in here? It's perfectly reasonable that there could have been. You've got a fancy mosaic in the side room of the building. Why not in the centre of the villa? Unfortunately, there is not a shred of evidence that there was ever a mosaic in here. We've not had a single tessera out of this entire trench. Had there been a mosaic in here that was removed, you would expect there still to be a few tessera lying around in some of these deposits, but there's not a single one. It may be these few tiles that are sat here, that may be part of the original floor, just a little surviving pocket. So it's possible to say that maybe this was just a red tile floor all the way through here. At some time, someone has come along here and they've taken all the original floor away. If it was those red tiles, you can imagine that they would have any number of uses in any number of other buildings. They'd be very easy to take up and cart away somewhere else. So under that we have natural, we have a bit of mortar that those tiles, if they were there, would have been sat on. But we've got evidence for burning. In here is this orangey colour where the natural has been baked. So someone's been having a fire in here, and potentially that is after this floor is gone, you've got people effectively squatting in the remnants of the building. It still stands to a large part, but it's starting to decay, the roof's starting to come off, they're trying to repair it and so on. This may be a crude foundation in the centre of the room to again put up some support for things above to try and stop them falling down, like that post pad. What we do have is later surfaces that are put in here, and you can see if you're standing over there, you've got these layers in here which are basically rammed chalk and flint, and this potentially is just a remnant of that, although it's a very, very firmly packed remnant of it. And that's just a crude surface that they're laying, and that may well be because the use of the buildings is changing. People are no longer living here. Perhaps they might be using it to just keep animals. It's becoming quite a humble structure. Perhaps the roof has even gone at this point and it's just the walls that survive. They're throwing this stuff down here just to create a surface that, particularly in the winter, is suitable for animals to sort of walk around on. We don't know ultimately, but what again they're trying to do is just eke out the life of this building just a little bit longer. This is the back wall of the villa here, and we've got this big gap in it. When we were excavating, we suspected maybe this was a doorway out the back of the room, something like that. It's an opening. I wouldn't necessarily call it a doorway, but it's certainly an opening. It's a very, you can see this edge of the wall here is very, very rough, and potentially that's where they've just crudely hacked part of it away. You imagine if you are keeping animals in here as a barn or that kind of structure, they're going to need to get in and out, and it's very difficult for Daisy the cow to get out of a little doorway, so you have to make the gap a bit wider. Potentially that's what we're looking at here. Again, there's no way you can ever know. We can just sort of hypothesize about why it's like that. In the room space, you'll see between the two walls we've just got all of this rubble. We've got flint from the wall and chalk, we've got the roof slates, the stone, and we've also got some of the terracotta roof tiles as well. So we can tell from all the tiles, there've been hundreds of pieces of tile, that this building had both stone roof tiles and terracotta roof tiles for some reason. It may be for aesthetic reasons, it may be different phases of building or replacement or something like that, but we know that there were two types, and the rest is just from the walls crumbling in and falling over. The roof is usually the first thing to go in a building because the timbers will rot away. Once that happens, the top of the wall will start to weather and degrade, and it will all start to fall off. Things will start growing on it, and eventually it will just fall over. So that's probably what happened here. Outside of the back wall, we've got all these successive demolition and rubble deposits. That may be from episodes where the walls are falling down or being taken down or knocked down, and they're forming these layers. You'll see in the section here, we've got like a darker deposit, and that's quite rich in domestic waste. It's got charcoal in it, it's got bone in it, pottery and so on. And probably what that is, if people are living in the shell of the building in some form or another, they ultimately don't care about the mess anymore. It's not like the heyday of the villa when you'd have your fine dining and you'd bury all your rubbish over on the hill or something. They're just chucking it out the back door. They don't care anymore. You know, there's weeds growing everywhere and so on. It doesn't really matter. So that's what that relates to. And it's starting to fill up this space here, which is the terrace that's constructed originally for the building to sit on this flat platform. So they've cut down into the natural geology. That's what all this orangey brown stuff is, to create this flat platform. And all the rubble and all the waste is actually filling up that whole space and spreading in that direction. And that's what all of this stuff is. It's just collapse, general rubbish, bone, pottery, building rubble and so on. You'll see down outside of the wall here, we've got this orangey clay, and that is the natural geology, the pure natural geology. There are some sandy patches and gravelly patches, but the clay is the natural geology that we immediately encounter. There is chalk below that, but above that we've got this clay. And we've exposed that because we want to look at the foundation cut of this wall. And that's really important because we know a lot about the end of the villa. We've got datable material out of the rubble, lots of coins, pottery and so on. So we can be reasonably confident that the villa's falling out of use towards the end of the 4th century. That's what all the coins and the pottery is telling us. But what we really don't know is when the villa was built. So if we can get datable material out of that foundation cut, that is the best chance we have of working out when the whole thing was constructed. Unfortunately, neither here nor anywhere else in that trench did we recover anything, not a shred of datable material from that foundation. So quite when the thing was built, we don't know. That may well be able to be confirmed in any future work, who knows. So that's still a bit of an unknown at this point in time. The only other thing really to mention is the only non-Roman feature in here is this ceramic pipe, which is the Victorian land drain you may well have just seen cutting through the mosaic. So as land drains go, fairly dull, but fairly important. It's because of this that we know that this site is here in the first place. So that's kind of it really. This is the story of the decline of the villa. It's a very, very sad end to what was once a sort of quite a grand, albeit humble, but fairly fancy building. So we're sort of seeing that last dilapidated sort of state. It's all a little bit sad. I feel like I should have a small violin or something. But that's the story. So thanks very much for listening. If you've got any queries or questions or whatever, just grab me. I'll try and answer as many as I can before I lose my voice. Thanks for listening. Well, we know there's a bathhouse out there. So it's basically that big. From the other side of the spoil heap to the far side of that trench, that's the villa building itself.